Hey, what's up? Dawnna St. Louis here. I have recently been working with a new set of clientele, so to speak. I just had this huge trip that was kind of a game changer for me to Turks and Caicos, and really had an opportunity to surround myself by people who were, nine-figure millionaires and billionaires were, they were just in the room. And it was kind of cool because there are some lessons that I heard, there are things that I heard and learned that the billionaires were teaching the millionaires. And so but the lessons, even though these were billionaires teaching millionaires, these were lessons that we could actually apply to our own businesses. And I will tell you that a lot of these lessons made a huge impact in regards to what I learned and what I brought back with me. So I hope these lessons will be really, really helpful to you. And so there are 7 little lessons that made a huge impact in regards to my mindset and in regards to how I move forward. So what's up, Lisa? How are you doing, honey? We just got off the phone. So I'm here in Philly. Again, my name is Dawnna St. Louis. I'm CEO of High Profit Zone. We help experts turn their expertise into a high profit business. And of course, we have a methodology to do that, and it just works. So let me share these lessons with you really, really quickly, and we're going to kind of slide through these because I have another appointment that I got to get to. All right, so here's the first one. The first lesson had to do with money. And one thing that the billionaires were telling the millionaires, and of course this kind of trickles down because I heard a lot of people saying, I wish I had this information back when I had less money, which was that they don't risk enough of their capital on themselves in a way to actually spark results. So what happens is a lot of people wait until they have the money and then they take a risk on themselves. And they say, well, that's not really taking a risk because you're waiting until you have it. If you really want to move yourself into action, spend money when you don't have it. In other words, take out the loan or figure a way to barter it or do whatever you have to do that you know that if you fail, this would be detrimental. In other words, put yourself in a position where you either have to win or things are really, really bad. Right? And that was really kind of shocking to me because you're just thinking, well, they have the money, they would just do it. No, it was really one of the things where they're like, no, you need to take bigger risks for yourself because that will actually force you to take action. They do not believe in blaming the teacher for their inability to do something. And so it's that whole idea of taking bigger risk and bigger reward is huge in that community. And they're always talking about, it's okay to invest in an organization that you don't know if they're going to succeed because it's going to force you to think differently in pressing that success. They say some of their greatest lessons come from the companies that they really don't think are going to have a chance as compared to the ones that they think are laying it out. Well, it's the same thing for their own success. They say if they take a big risk on themselves in regards to what they're learning, so they pay someone a whole lot of money to teach them something, they're more likely to force that information and to grab that information and hold on to that information and do something with that information as compared to if it didn't cost them anything at all. So they're big on taking bigger capital risks. In other words, invest in yourself even when you don't have the money. Take out a loan, do whatever you have to do in order to force yourself to take action. So I thought that one was one of the more interesting ones that they said because I was like, wow, really? You guys are saying that? And they say it all the time. They always talk about forcing themselves, especially because they have so much money. So they always talking about forcing themselves into these positions where they have to take big risks. And they said they wish they had taken those risks when they had little to no money instead of waiting until everything was perfect. The second one was time. One of the mistakes that they felt like they made, especially early on, was that they would let quote unquote life events become a priority over a smart investment in themselves. So for example, they would like, oh, I want to go to that, but it's my sister's birthday weekend, or we're planning to go, it's my son's little league game, right? It was like things like that they were like, not that those things aren't important, but they started prioritizing these activities over smart self-investment. So they wouldn't go to a class or an event or something like that because they let these life events get in their way. You know, they even had one guy said, yeah, I remember when I said I couldn't go to, there was this opportunity for him to take a meeting with Apple early on in his career. And he said he didn't take the meeting with Apple because he didn't have enough time off available at his company. And he would have had to eat that time off that he was taking. And he said after he thought about it a second time, he was like, you know what? Fine. I'll just eat it. It's fine. I'm just going to have to, that's money's just going to come out of my paycheck, but I'm going to go to this meeting. And he said, going to that meeting was the thing that made him a millionaire, right? And that's what made him a billionaire. He said it was another way of taking a risk on himself. So you'll hear people say, well, I can't do that because I don't have time off, or I can't do that because, it's my son's little league game, or I can't do that because it's my sister's birthday weekend, or, but they have all of these time-based excuses. And he goes, those time-based excuses are not good enough. He goes, you really, and it sounds cold. He goes, but by making that one decision, this guy said it was the difference between becoming a millionaire and staying where he was. Just by saying, you know what? This has to be a priority for me. And that's what it really came down to. It was really at this moment saying, you know what? I'm always there for every birthday. I'm there for every little league game. I'm there for every family activity. I'm going to miss this one. And that's okay. And so it was kind of giving yourself permission is what I heard, to put yourself first. Here was number 3. Number 3 was all about work, right? They will stick. They said they stuck with early on. They stuck with things that were not working because everyone was doing them, right? And so, and which I thought was so interesting because, these guys have hired me. They're billionaires. I mean, with a literal B, right? And they've hired me to be their coach and their partner and that type of thing. And when we had this conversation, and I said, well, why? And they said, because you're not saying what everyone else is saying. You actually think differently. And because you think differently, you impact the market in a different way. And because you impact the market in how we think in a different way, it gives us the opportunity to walk in and be completely different from everyone else and make people pay closer attention. And so they were very clear. They're like, you think differently, which makes us work differently, which makes us succeed. Well, it's the same thing with work. They say people will stick with what's not working because everyone is doing it. So one of the things that we talk about in the high profit zone is stop doing this stupid BS funnel filling thing where you're like, we're going to give away everything free for 3 years and then we're going to finally sell. And this guy said, you walked in and you started talking about people aren't buying information. It's free. Solutions are cheap. People want something else. And he goes, and when you start telling us the third thing that people wanted and they're paying for, he said, I literally went back to my office and said, we're changing all of our marketing. He goes, Dawnna, just that little tweak made us think differently and work differently. And so that's kind of the thing, right? So they said one of the things that they did wrong was that people will stick with what's not working because so many people are saying do it. And what the challenge is that everyone is saying do it, but everyone is broke. So why are you listening to those people? And he said, so your job really is not to do what everyone else is doing, but to actually do the opposite of what everyone else is doing because you don't want to be a part of the pack, and find people who are saying things that are different and doing things that are different, and surround yourself with those people because those people are going to actually change how you think. So stop doing what everyone else is doing and stop sticking with things that aren't working because they're not working. So really quickly, the top 3 again are money. That you have to actually take the risk when you don't have the money, because if you take the risk when you do have the money, it's really not a risk, which I was like, oh yeah, duh. Number 2, stop prioritizing what they call annual life events over putting yourself first, right? So the little league game, they're going to have another little league game. The birthday weekend, there's going to be another birthday weekend. Sometimes you have to put those things aside and make yourself a priority and invest in yourself, especially when something comes along just once a year, or, like that thing isn't going to happen again. So put that thing first for that time and give yourself permission to do that. And then of course, number 3, If something's not working and everyone else is doing it, stop sticking with it. Stop sticking with what everyone else is doing and do something a little different. Okay, here's number 4, changing where you are. This was interesting because I just had a conversation with my son the other day, and we were talking about the number of generations that it takes in order for people to move away from their neighborhood based on their financial demographics and even their socio-demographics. I know these are the conversations my son and I have on a regular basis, but I was telling him that it takes generally about 3 generations for people to move out of their area, and it takes even more for them to move out of their area if their family doesn't have any money. And so, and I used our family, and I kind of talked about that. I'm like, I am that 3rd generation that moved out of Florida. My son is the 4th generation, right? And so changing that playground, and you guys have heard me talk about this, changing that playground, they said, had a significant impact because it impacted what they did on a regular basis. And one of the bigger things was changing their habits. They said you have to get out of where you are in order to really change your habits. And changing your habits, again, sparks those ideas that you come up with. And if you're at a place where you're like, this isn't comfortable, or this isn't working for me, I don't want to say comfortable because they're never looking for comfort. They're like, this isn't working for me, and therefore I'm going to do something different. Now, here's the funny thing that I will tell you when we get to the end about this, where all of this actually leads to one thing that they all said, and it kind of blew my mind. The next thing was playthings, right? And you've heard me talk about playgrounds, playmates, and playthings. They're like, change the actions that you're doing on a regular basis. If you find that you're doing the same action and it's not giving you, or if you wake up in the morning and you go bike riding every day, then stop going bike riding, go get on the elliptical. And instead of getting on the elliptical, go for a jog. And instead of going for a jog, go to a spin class. But they were talking about changing just your regular habits, sleeping in one day, waking up extra early on another. They really talked about these physical habits that they were telling people to change. And they said, because those physical habits change everything else about what's going on in your day. One guy said he swore he was not a morning person. And he said no one could ever convince him that he was a morning person. He never was going to be. And he had the mantra of, I hate mornings. And he said, I just decided one day that I was going to try for 1 week to be up by 6:30 just to see what happened. And he goes, all of a sudden my productivity skyrocketed because from 6:30 until 8 o'clock, I got all this time that I could work and I could think, and people weren't just on me. And he goes, and my productivity changed and how I approached my day changed just by changing that. Whereas another guy said he did something different. He said, I woke up a little later, and then when everybody else went, and I stopped working in the afternoon, and then everybody else left that particular, went to bed, I then got up and started working. And he goes, and it just changed. It changed completely my behaviors because now I had this different level of activity. And then, of course, your playmates, the people around you. I can tell you specifically that being around people who just think differently all the time, being around billionaires and millionaires who are literally thinking different. I mean, and these are like 9-figure millionaires, right? Just how they think and the things that they talk about and the things that they see that are challenging make a big difference. I was talking to a lady the other day who said, I shared some information with my group that you had shared with me. And she goes, and none of them were willing to take action. And so I don't know what to do. And I said, it might be time to change your playmates. If you're around people who are not action taking, your chances of not being action taking goes up exponentially. And so this happens a lot where you have to really change your playmates, the people who you're around, in order to make a big difference. So those are the top 6. So we got money, time, work, playground, plaything, playmates. And then the last one is that all of this leads to fear. And they're like, there is such an epidemic in the lack of self-belief that it infests everything we do. Sorry about that. From the email that we send to the what we put on Facebook to what we post, there's such an inauthenticity, an epidemic of inauthenticity that's hitting us, that when people are coming out and they're being more authentic, all of a sudden they're finding that these layers of fear start breaking down. And so the reason that people won't take this big money risk is because they're afraid that they're not going to get it back. The reason they won't take that time risk is they're afraid of what their family will think. The reason they won't take that work risk is because they're afraid that something's going to happen at work if they're not there, or if they don't keep doing what everyone else is doing, that they're going to miss out. They're afraid they're going to miss out. If they change their playground, then they're afraid that they won't like the new thing that they go to. If they change their playthings, they might not enjoy. So they're afraid they won't enjoy the new things that they're doing. If they change their playmates, they're worried about what the people will say that they were with before. And so all of this led to fear. But here's the one lesson, the number one lesson that really, really impacted me. These people, all of them across the board, consistently chased after discomfort. And the more they chased after getting out of their comfort zone, the more comfortably they were able to live. That was the one thing that struck me about every one of them. The more they invested in themselves, the more they took that risk in regard to, I'm going to do this anyway, even though I don't have the time off from work, even though I'm supposed to be at this little league game, even though it's my sister's birthday weekend. The more they said, you know what, I'm just not going to do what everyone else is doing. I'm going to try this new thing with this new crazy lady that's over here giving a presentation. The more they changed their playground and their playthings and their playmates, and the more that they just stared in the face of fear and said, screw you, I'm doing it this way. The more that they did those things that were highly uncomfortable, the more financially comfortable they became. Across the board, every single one of them, when I interviewed them, talked about the risk. Even my clients, when we had this conversation and talked about the risk. And the reason that we have those risk conversations is I need to know how far I can push them, because that's my job. I needed to see how far I can push them in regards to risk, in regards to like opening up a little more. But every one of them said that they chase being uncomfortable. I had one guy that said, you know why I hired you to be my coach? He goes, I hired you to be my coach because at the end of the day, you have no problem making me be uncomfortable and making me think differently. And you're constantly pushing that. And that's why I hired you. He goes, it has been the number one thing for me that I haven't been able to find somebody who wasn't saying what everyone else was saying. He goes, you just don't. And so they chase discomfort. They chase that difference, somebody saying something that's not being done. So think about that for yourself. If you're doing what everyone else is doing all the time, then you're going to get the same shit that everyone else is getting. I love you, Wendy. So that email, don't be safe in that email. What if you just said what you had to say? What if you said, you know what? I don't have the money. I'm going to make this investment anyway. Right? I'm going to do this. You know what? I know I'm supposed to be at that thing this weekend, but I'm going to have to switch it off and do something else. You know what? I know this work that I'm doing, or I know these people look like they're absolutely crazy. You know what? I'm going to pick up the phone and call them anyway and see what happens. Let me see if I can work with them. Or, you know what? Screw them. They're not good enough for me. I'm going to cut them off. You know what? I'm tired of where I am. I'm tired of the things I'm doing. I'm tired of the people I'm around. I'm going to change all of that up. I am going to face fear in the face, and I'm going to do something differently. Just for today, what I want you to do is this. I want you to think about one thing that you could do that scares you just a tiny bit, just that one thing, and do that instead. Even if you don't get the results that you were expecting to get, what I really want you to do is, number one, what can you do to force those results, right? And if you still don't get them, how were you different because of it? Did something bad happen to you? Or did you say, you know what, that wasn't that bad, I can do it again? What was the outcome? How did you feel after doing it? Because these 7 lessons that I learned from them are truly, truly game changers. And what I loved, because I was frustrated with something, and what I loved about what they said was this. So we're having this little meeting, and they said, here's the thing, Dawnna, you're not necessarily saying what everyone else is saying. And because of that, it scares the shit out of people. So only the people who are really winners are going to be able to work with you. They're going to be able to handle it. Everybody else is going to be like, you know what? She's not saying do the funnel like everybody else. So if I don't do the funnel like everybody else, I'm going to lose money. He goes, meanwhile, they're losing money and time just by not taking a risk. He goes, so it's going to be harder for you to find those people. But when you do find the right people, they're going to be your premium clients. He goes, oh, and he looked at me, he goes, I want you to think about it right now. You're sitting in a room where there are 9-figure millionaires and billionaires right now, and we're dripping over every word that you have to say. He goes, you might be with the wrong playmates. And so that really made me think about that. And what I love about working with them, though, is that they give me these fantastic lessons that I can then go and pass out to my network and my people and go, come on, guys. Those of you who have the testicular fortitude and ovarian audacity to take a risk on yourself, I'm here. Let's do it. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you guys. Like I said, when I get these lessons, I really want to share them with you. And by the way, I have the High Profit Zone $1 Million Mansion Retreat is coming up June 10th, 11th, and 12th, with the 9th and the 13th being travel days. I have 2 positions left in there if you are interested in going, but you have to sign up right away. The only way to sign up is to send me a direct message. So PM me if you're interested. Share this video. If you watch it and you get value from it and you're like, damn, she's working her ass off, share my damn video. That's all. Just share it. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to force people to watch it, unless, of course, you want to send it to them in messages. Anyway, I hope this helped you guys. Please share my videos. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you later. If you're interested in coming to the High Profit Zone, you can go to highprofitzone.com or go to highprofitcoaches.com. Watch the webinar, set up a time to talk to me, and let's talk about getting you in there for June 10th, 11th, and 12th. Talk to you later. Have a good one.